Divine Source, Great Spirit, Ancient Ones, Ancestors, Angel Helpers, beautiful, beloved beings of light, come be with us this day, holding this space sacred in service to love, in service to truth, and in service to the highest good of all. And so it is.
Okay, welcome to Talking Spirit. This is episode 5 of our little series. My name is Jutta, and I have with me my friend.
Welcome. This is Elizabeth.
And again, we're in the same space as last episode. Well, no, actually, we're in your house this time. Different space, but still together in person. And seems like there's been a theme up of body identification. What does that mean? What does that mean to us on this path of waking up? And there's so much we could get into with that, and I'm not quite sure where we're going to land with it, but feels like a really good topic to explore because people can really get hung up on the idea of being a person with a body, stuck in a body, and all the stories that come along with that. Stories usually that are not really fun. Can include a lot of pain and tightness and confusion and hyper-focus into arenas that really aren't helpful to our minds. Just keeping us stuck in these small patterns, small stories, small storylines. And all of it can be helpful and can be used on this path to help us wake up, or it can go in the opposite direction. So we're just going to explore and see where we get to with it.
Yeah, so the images for the video came in weeks ago, right. And this topic actually was here weeks ago, and we mentioned that in one of them that there was other stuff that came through that seemed more pressing. And when it first showed up, I was hearing the to be or not to be from Shakespeare, and Jutta and I both came across the Course in Miracles, so we in some respects source from some of those teachings. And within that context, and it's not just in that way of looking at the spiritual path that is the Course in Miracles, it's through many, many different paths. This idea of a death wish in the mind, and this idea of there being, this looping in darkness, in a sleepness, in unconsciousness that keeps playing out over and over and over again, and that is just total insanity. And as you were starting the intro, I was just having the ridiculousness of this idea that we are the vastness that is light in truth, trying to stuff down into the idea of bodies, our brilliance and our limitlessness. No wonder most of us walk around in the idea or the experience, the seeming experience of pain in the body, because it just doesn't jive, that we could do this, could be a body. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so that was just showing up in my mind. But again, seemingly taking a body is actually, in this way, having chosen death. And so the idea that we would want out of it, the idea of to be or not to be in terms of should I kill myself or should I be here? Is there some way to ameliorate my pain or even avoid pain in an afterlife? Some of those ideas are there in the idea of to be or not to be. We're playing with that concept, of what's living and what's dying, what's being in a body or being in our vastness. And there really, as you said, there's so many ways we could go with this conversation. We don't know what's going to come forth because we're just asking the Spirit to speak through us. But, these are parts of our deep inner meditations that we've had for years. You know, what's with this body? What's with these body symptoms? What's with the changing of my body, the aging of my body, the temperature I seem to experience? You know, it's like it's so consuming, as you said, of our mind, when that's not where we're going to be best served with our mind's focus. And yet the body seems to require a lot of energy. We farm, we plant seeds, we grow food, we tend it, we package it, we ship it all over the world. We have to have golden coins and pieces of paper to buy it. There's so much that goes into body identification. And it's crazy, the vastness of this topic, really. You know?
And there's so much tied into it. Like, you know, I feel like sometimes when we get into the body, a topic, there's a lot of like, oh, don't go there. Like, don't touch that. Like, that's freaking me out. And I'm just thinking of, we shared this experience. I forget when we talked about it, but when we have the same experience of being little and like being falling asleep and having this feeling of like expanding beyond the body and being so large you can't even really put a word to it or describe how big, but like in an instant, and going down to atomic size and this almost in the same instant. And like for me it was this experience of going back and forth between really big and really small, and I had no reference point, and it was really freaking me out. And for you, it was kind of a bit of a different experience, right? Like,
yeah, I just remember as a kid laying in my bed, and I would feel myself expand through the walls of my house. Like there were no walls, and I was not this little kid in a little body. It was like I became a giant and then seemed to come back to my body. And I had, I was telling you that my mother and father seemed to put up, it was in the days when like the glow in the dark stickers were just coming to be kind of interest. And they put the solar system on the ceiling in my bedroom, and I loved looking at it, but I could actually close my eyes, and it was like I was hurtling through the universe and seeing the stars. You know, it was like a very quantum out-of-body experience that I had regularly. And so the idea of, you know, all this effort to deal with a body, it never made sense to me as a kid, you know, but it's like, it's what you seem to do here. Right? So, but we had those experiences. I'm sure all of you that have listened to it or will listen to it have your own version of it, you know. But the programming is really thick, you know, to tell you that you're not that, or to tell you that you need a cell phone to be able to communicate with somebody across the planet. It's like, no, actually, we're all in one mind, and we're actually capable of telepathic communication. You know, Yuta and I have shared space now a few times, and we're constantly like, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing right at the moment I'm about to ask her to do this thing, you know, or she's going to ask me to do something, and I'm picking up on it the minute she's going to ask me about it. So, you know, we have these experiences of knowing we're beyond the body, that we're actually experiencing ourselves energetically and as the mind. But there's so much that says you need a house and you need clothing and you need to do stuff to exercise and nutrition and
So, a good body and a bad body, and a functioning one versus a non-functioning one, and what happens when it doesn't function. You know, can you still be in your function when the body stops to properly work, seemingly, or can that also be a tool, you know, to use? Is it a teaching device? Yeah, there's so much around that whole topic. But yeah, I think there's different ways of approaching it, and there can be a lot of fear when you put your finger on, where am I identified with the body, and can I change somewhere that will actually allow me to expand? And maybe that's scary, you know, maybe that's the scary thing. If I expand, what's going to be asked of me? Like, it just goes on and on and on, right? When your mind wants to actually think about what if I look at, maybe I'm not this small thing, this thing of flesh and bones, and it's kind of weird to think about it, you know, like to think that that's all you are. Because I think somewhere everybody knows there's so much more to you than you can see with your eyes, and there's something always calling you to walk towards that more. So I guess this is just an invitation, you know, to open up a little bit in that direction for everybody.
I was having on my mind a gentleman that that was somebody that gave me some incredible help when I really needed it, who was the spiritual elder of his tribe in Africa. He just seemed to make his transition out of here a couple weeks ago. And so I've had the idea of death and leaving the body, come up recently in different ways. And I was thinking about him, we have these stories about when you die, you're done, and like there's some final resting place. And that's just not how I view things. Mm-hmm. And it's not how I've ever experienced things. And people would be sad when somebody died. And I'd actually kind of be more in celebration when somebody died and be sad when somebody was born. It was like, oh no,
you're back.
You came here.
No.
Oh no. So for me, actually, the dropping of the idea of the body is a blessing. And I was just having in my mind that whole idea of, we seem to have a body while it's useful. And when it's no longer useful, then it may seem that the person dissolves on out of here. And I was just in that meditation about Malidoma of the work he could do apparently was complete. And now where he is beyond the veil, he'll be able to do apparently much more dynamically his service, to help the awakening of the mind. It's like, we're not always helpful here. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we need to get out of here to be able to operate on another level. Mm-hmm. And so again, this idea of dropping a body as if it's more or less significant or more or less meaningful in a way, it just doesn't even compute. It's like, it's just what seems to be possible here is working out some healing of the mind and forgiveness work. And then when it's no longer optimal, we'll seem to shift into some other configuration of energy. And, we call that here death. I haven't had the experience of death in that way because I've received messages from ancestors, people have talked about, family members that died. And for me, it wasn't like, they'd say, oh, I'm so sad, I miss so-and-so. And for me, it was like, I don't miss them because I still experience them. So for me, this idea of a limited time and space and a limited thing called a body with a specific personality just didn't ever jive or add up for me. Doesn't mean I still haven't had programming to let go of around it, but the vastness, the limitlessness, the infinite nature, and the eternal nature. It's eternal. What we're dealing with, our light is eternal. And so, if you want to tap into great-great-great-grandmother Mary, she's available. That's just my experience. I don't know what to say about it. But again, this idea of a body that's going to be born and die, it's just a lie. But it's compulsively compelling to our mind to think about it. And it's like we're running from death while we seem to be here, which in a way, though, is living as if we're dead already.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, that whole to be or not to be, it's like you think death is when the body stops doing what it is meant to be doing. But if you're, like you were just telling me about this guy that is working, I forget what job, doesn't even matter, but he's counting the days to his retirement, and he's telling people that come to work with him that, how many days.
Giving a day count.
He just says the day count without any context, and finally Elizabeth asked him what that is, and it's the days until his retirement.
It's like a 35, 40-year-old person counting days till he retired, and he was so miserable and depressed.
And it was a big number.
It was a huge number. Like 30-year account, right? It's like doing time daily.
And that's death.
It's prison. It's a prison sentence.
You're already dead while thinking you're alive.
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing, with being helpful beyond the body, that's like the biggest story of this world with Jesus, like he had his story of having a body, seemingly, for being really helpful. And that was, we all know how that ended up. But, he's still being helpful now. Maybe more now than he was before. Like, he feels like a very strong presence in my life. So, yeah, this idea of being restricted physically from doing your function just it's not true.
Yeah, I was I've been working with a woman that was on her deathbed, told she'd be dead in a number of days if she stopped her medications, and was in hospice, and, pretty dramatic story. And she's just still alive and, seemingly resurrecting. And, there's just so much investment in the world. I don't know where I was going to go with this story about this person, but there's just so much investment in death and in, stories of death, and using the body as a means to, and I'm not saying this about this person, but as a means to not fulfill our function. A lot of people seem to choose sickness and death as a way out of being their brilliant light while they seem to have a body. And I understand that. I wanted to die for many years of my life, in part because I didn't want to fulfill my function, because I knew it was going to be hard getting to the place where I was really available to shine my light, and every time I tried to step into my purpose more deeply, I faced more resistance and more ideas of I can't, and more seeming attack, whether it was my own mind stuff or seemingly outside of myself, messages that seemed to be like, don't you dare try to do this. And so there were times where it seemed like I was choosing, maybe I'll just check out with some cancer or a heart attack. We seem to start attacking the body, which is neutral. On its own. It was meant to be a neutral avatar device. And we have somehow had a twist in the mind and in the energetics that have led us to somehow start attacking the body. And often it's out of the guilt and the shame that's unconscious that we start beating our bodies up. And in part, it turns out to be often an excuse. I'm going to use my time to kill myself. A day at a time, I'm going to kill myself in some form or fashion. Overworking, rage, attacking it with alcohol or drugs, just having negative thought loops over and over again. I'm a piece of junk, I'm a piece of junk, I'm a piece of junk. And eventually the body seems to conform to our thoughts and seems to then take us offline, where it's very difficult to serve our function. And so I've actually been presented for my own healing with lots of people that were really, really sick, that kind of were in that place of I couldn't possibly serve my purpose. But then I was shown people that were with one leg in a wheelchair, blind, and I was just telling this story, showing up to serve, in pain all the time, but they had learned that they could move beyond themselves and still be the light, even though the body seemed to be devastated. So the body actually doesn't have an opportunity to stop us or help us in a way to serve our purpose. It is still neutral. Even if we're attacking it in a way, you could say it's still neutral, because the light is always present to deliver, whether we seem to be sitting in a wheelchair or we seem to be able-bodied. It's no different.
Yeah, well, the thing is, right, like if you've ever really been in service, do you think about your body?
Exactly.
Are you aware of your body? Are you aware if there's pain, even if there was pain before? If you're fully in service, doesn't even mean in service to another person or anything like that, but if you're out of your own way, allowing whatever is to happen from the spirit to come through you, you don't think of yourself, you've been talking about this like self-obsession in a way, and how you're just, of course you're going to be so aware of like, oh, this back hurts, or oh my god, I have a blister on my foot and it's a pain in the ass, or whatever. Sorry. But if you get into you just make a prayer like, okay, what am I actually supposed to be doing? You forget all of that stuff. Maybe it's still there, it comes back here and there, but it's just a mind watcher opportunity in that moment.
Yeah, when I was younger, I, after high school and then went into working and then was doing my college and my work early life together, I was just pouring myself into kind of workaholism and, achievement and, trying to become somebody to pay the bills kind of a thing. And a lot of years of stress in the business world. And I got to the point where I was really sick. I had like big seeming digestive issues and food allergies and the hair falling out and the not sleeping well, and like everything hurt. Everything felt like an attack on my system because my mind was full of a lot of garbage and was not focused on my purpose. It was focused on tending to my seeming body needs and material needs. You know, how do I house it? How do I clothe it? How do I feed it? You know, it was like consumed with that. I was talking to somebody in a message recently. We become literally consumed with ourselves when we're in the little self. It's like a parasitic virus that feeds on itself. And if you don't get in the channel of grace and you don't get in the channel of service with the divine, it's pretty tough going for the body. It's kind of impossible, really, to live, to truly live. It kind of can't happen through a body. Again, the body can be the avatar shell, but it's actually the light that is nourishing you. That's where you get your mana. That's where you get your daily bread, is through the light. And you don't get that in a job or exercising. You know, that may put you in a state of mind that makes you receptive to your light, but it's actually not through the body. Now, we don't dismiss the body. At the same time, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. You know, I had the yoga journey at one point, and I was telling Yuta that I went to my yoga teacher training. It was a month long at the place's corporate headquarters in Canada, and during that time there was a big Hindu festival, and they had in that festival there was this big part of it that was ceremony where the sadhuks, the renunciates, the spiritual practitioners, they would do these sort of body mortification things where they would like hang themselves off of hooks to like show that you could transcend the mind and the body by being in your alignment. You know, it's pretty gruesome, actually.
Wow.
Literally seeing people hooked, hanging off of suspension rods and stuff. And it was horrifying, But, so it's a weird, peculiar way that we try to deal with our minds relative to the body. And
there's other people that do that for pleasure, too.
Exactly.
This kind of suspension. There's a whole other spectrum of that, too.
Yeah. And some of those things are about seeming, nervous system drives or adrenaline drives or seeming body functions that you're trying to tap into these kinds of states of mind through generating a lot of seeming body stuff internally. But all those things are available through our connection and more. The grace and the light, the intelligence that wants to come in through to awaken us, is so much more dynamic than any manipulation we could do to the body. Some people get addicted to sex because they like the release. They like that moment of the orgasm where they're out of their minds and they're out of their bodies. And some people chase it endlessly because they think that's the only way to do it. And the next thing you know, it's an addiction. And instead, there's this divine light that is so powerful and juicy that, like, why wouldn't you go there?
Because it's scary, right?
Because it's scary. Because it's a dissolution of the self in a much bigger way than just a momentary orgasm. Like, oh, that felt good for 10 seconds. And you want to give this to me endlessly? And when you do, it will dissolve me and my personality. So, we're so choosing the body, we're so choosing littleness. If that's our focus. If it's our focus to educate it and feed it and make money for it and to have care at the end of life and insurance and all this, we're just focused on the wrong thing. It's okay if that's what you've been choosing, but it's like that we just got to tell it straight. That's choosing littleness.
Well, it's the focus, right? Because like when you're in the channel with the spirit, you may be given directions to do certain things with the body. You may be directed to work out or do yoga. Or to get some supplements or to see a doctor or a homeopath or whatever it may be, a chiropractor. You may be guided to see somebody to help you seemingly with the body, but the fact that it's a piece of guidance means that there's a completely different purpose to it versus you start with, oh, I need to go to the chiropractor. Oh, I have this problem. I need to see a doctor. Oh, I have this and that. And, I need to fix that thing. But if you let it all up to the divine to handle it, Yeah, it may look like you're doing what everybody else is doing, but you're coming from a completely different place.
It's the purpose underneath it, for sure. Yeah, as you were talking, it just popped into my mind, back to the yoga concept. There was a young man when I did my teacher training. He was like a 16-year-old, and he had already taken his vows to renunciate, be a renunciant, meaning no worldly pleasures, no money, no sex, no body thoughts. It's like really like let it go on your way to becoming a swami. And at one point, it came out that he had this big, big meltdown, years into this kind of renunciation. And part of it was because he had started to develop feelings for a young woman and eventually had sexual relations with her. And he thought it was so, like he had such a failing. He had done something so wrong, so that all these concepts of what it means to be spiritual were there relative to the body. And then all of these ideas of I've failed because I didn't follow through on this vow I made. And then there were all of these things that came out later about how he had supposedly had a story of sexual abuse. And that's why he had chosen to become a renunciate, because he didn't want to face what was there from this story that was operating within his mind. And so we sometimes think, if I just deny the body, I'll be okay. If I just ignore the pain that I'm having, I'll be fine. Or if I just limit myself from the possibility of sex. Somebody told me they wear a wedding ring because they had thoughts about other people, rather than looking at their relationship and what it wasn't fulfilling for them, and looking at why they were having thoughts about other people. There was an effort to try to train the mind to remember you're married by putting your ring on all the time, right? So using these forms and structures that are body structures, ideas of you would put a ring on a body to remind you of an oath that you made. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but there was a message for this person that was saying there's something more that you might be called to. And rather than take a look at the relationship that might have not served its purpose anymore, there's an effort to control the body. Don't have sex thoughts, don't have lust thoughts, don't find your power that you think you're going to find, whatever. So again, we're not looking to judge any of these things, but these are the practical things. Yuta brought up the practical application a couple talks ago. Practical application is we can't gloss over this stuff. So we can't deny that we seem to be in bodies, that we seem to believe we're in bodies. Yeah. But as you said, if you don't know what the purpose for the body is, which is to be a vehicle for spirit and to wake up and to use it for forgiveness and for service, then it's a really tough road. It's a really tough road that we try to manage, and it takes so much energy, incredible amount of energy to try to manage the body.
It's such a strong topic, because I know for myself on my own journey, it was so funny. I was still pretty fresh with A Course in Miracles, and it was kind of shortly before I joined the Living Miracles ACIM community, and I was in this relationship, and in my mind, I'm like, I know what's going on, oh, the Course is so great, what a good teaching, I get it, and I somewhere had thought I had this realization that I didn't need to have sex anymore, and that, I didn't need body pleasures.
Yeah.
Great, ultimately probably true, right? But I was I was with this man in a relationship, and we were talking. He wasn't really interested. Well, he was interested in the Course, but he hadn't really gotten into it much. We were just starting to watch some videos together, and he had his critical mind on, whereas me, it was a bit off for me at the moment, and I just had made some conclusions. And at some point he pointed out that you're looking at everything the same except the body. And he said it probably 3, 4, 5 times before I actually was able to hear him. And it really broke me in the moment, because I thought I was doing so great, and I got really, it just shattered something in my footing. So I think I just wanted to share that, because there's so much protection around the body idea, and when the spirit wants to address it, there can be stuff interfering that will make you make conclusions that are not from the spirit. They're not the real thing. You might be you think you're having realizations maybe, like, oh, okay, I'm not a body, I'm free. Yeah. I don't need A, B, and C, like supplements maybe, or medicine, like, oh, I'm having pain, I can work it out in my mind. Yes, maybe ultimately you can, but in the moment, that may not be the guidance for you to like hammer your way through pain with your mind, because there's so much fear around the body concept.
Yeah, or
actually the concept, not the concept, but the reality of who you are. Because if you're fixing your pain with your mind, you're entering your true reality, and that's scary to the little self.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're just talking about all that in a really light way. And there's the other piece of it too, of like using teachings to beat yourself up and torture yourself, which is much more aggressive, like a version of what you were just referring to of, oh, I should be transcending the body and not have thoughts of pain or thoughts of temperature or thoughts of anything to do with the body, particularly relative to the course, it seems, but also in the yoga community. There were a lot of people, really aggressive in their practices, really like trying to get out there, trying to get through the stratosphere, into, the bliss bubble. And they were going to try to do it through their body or through withholding their food or using their, energy to build their kundalini and their prana. It's like we can play with the body stuff in so many different ways and use it to torture ourselves, use it to really get out the lash and lay it on thick, and I've seen it on so many different levels, as anybody would if you just pay attention, to your own mind, and then also to all the programming. I mean, it's like I can't look at anything online without there being 25 messages about pharmaceuticals and another 50 about creams and lotions and another makeup. 60 about equipment for exercising. And, it's just a constant messaging. You're the body. You're the body.
Get some
and
perfume.
Get it straightened out. Right. Cover up the odors.
You need to be tan. No hair.
Right.
In the wrong places.
Or have hair up on your head, and we can sew some back onto your scalp. And they're not judgments. Like, you can choose all of it.
Yeah.
You can choose all of it. But if it's driving your moment by moment experience to the point of obsession, that's a red flag. It's a big red flag. And we have to go through whatever journey we have to go through. And, there are times where dealing with seemingly restricting the body can be helpful. It's like you're talking about your relationship with somebody. When I went into the yoga community, I had quite a number of, one really long relationship and then a couple sort of longer, but I had mostly in my young adult through adulthood had mostly been in relationships.
Yeah, me too.
And so when I went into the yoga community, I was thrilled for the idea of renouncing the world and being able to take it off my mind. And in that community, we wore white pants and a yellow shirt so that we would just be pure in our dress, all kind of look the same, all be identifiable. When people walked in off the street, you know who to ask for, like, where's the bathroom? And it just also took the focus off the body. I had been in buying and planning for Bloomies and Macy's, and it was all about how did you look and how did you dress and how much were your shoes and how much was your watch and all this kind of stuff. And to drop that for a time and to just have a uniform I wore every day, I was focused on what's going on with me. What is in my mind? What am I noticing this morning when I wake up and I'm going to the temple to pray and meditate? I'm noticing I'm resentful, I'm tired, I'm crabby, I'm, thinking I should be better at my chanting. I'm still thinking my hair doesn't look great, right? It's like it can open, limiting the body at times can open our minds dynamically. So it's not that there's a don't do it or do it with the body. It's just like it can, as you said in the beginning, can all be helpful and it can all be used by the spirit. But when we're putting the body in front of our light, we're deeply asleep. We're operating from personas and personalities and body parts. And it's crazy. And some people are running around with their private parts as their personality and persona. It's like they're living through their, reproductive organs or their sex organs. Some people, that's it. And it shows up just in all these different ways. It's just kind of an endless conversation potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
how do we ever wrap this talk up? It's like it's going to go everywhere. We could go.
Really.
We could go for days just kind of going down different rabbit holes and cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
We could talk about body mortification. We could talk about body modification. We could talk about, all of the sense organs and all of the sensory perceptions, and it's just endless. And because we're talking about spirit, I feel light and energized and in the channel. But boy, if we were talking about these things from a place of, my body and my stuff, that's where I was always exhausted. I have somebody again who has very seemingly been through a lifetime of sickness and is always in some degree of suffering around the body. That sucks. I've been there. It's hell on earth. It's just awful. And the only answer, as you have talked about, is how do we get into our purpose and our function? That's the answer to our suffering. While the mind is being healed, is to get out of self so that the spirit can come through. That's the purpose of service, is so that the spirit can deliver the grace and the light through us. And as that happens, it transforms us. It transforms us out of the dark little pockets within our seeming mind and body. And the healing can then happen. The talk of miracles and people having miraculous recoveries and healings, it's because the light got in. The light got into the mind for a few minutes and into the energy field.
Yeah. That's why I like that concept of, sometimes, like, I've been fortunate in this seeming dream that I haven't had many body issues at all. I will have pain here and there. So I can't speak to the really chronic sort of sufferers, let's say. But I know that for me, there used to be a conclusion first when I got into A Course in Miracles that I could heal everything with my thoughts. And it would really mess me up, because then if it didn't work, then I would really, it would take up so much of my mind energy. So at one point it was just like, I'm done with that. Yeah. Maybe I'm not there yet. That's fine. Ultimately, sure, I could probably do this with my mind, but there must be something that I'm not ready for yet.
Some in-between step could still work.
So I started, using aspirin or some kind of pain reliever here and there. And what happened is that I would be available to the spirit, whereas before I was consumed with feeling pain and, being tired or feeling like I needed to rest, but actually I wanted to be in spirit's function and in the flow. Yeah. And just using pills seemed to really allow that in the moment. So there's no bad medicine. There's no,
for those that don't have the Course as any part of their journey, there are parts of the Course that really refer to the world's ideas of, say, medicine or supplements or even food, any of it, as being magic, rather than being in our miraculous state of mind. If we're on the world's stage with the world's thinking, we could potentially be engaging in magical thinking and endeavors and magical tools and symbols, meaning an aspirin would be seen as magic in some perspectives. And what we're saying is that those teachings of transcending the thought forms of the world are really deep. And it can be easy to learn a spiritual teaching and want to apply it immediately and thinking that you're failing if you're having a body thought or a pain and wanting an aspirin. I did the same dance. I tortured myself, 25 years ago, whatever, when I got the Course in my hands, I went right there myself. I should be able to transcend all of this stuff. And the fact is, as I went through the Course and read it regularly and fell asleep slobbering in it all the time, I did find that my symptoms went away. I did find that as my mind healed, I no longer had food allergies that were dropping me. Like I'd eat something and I'd fall asleep with a rash.
Where was your focus?
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't even on fixing that stuff,
my
right?
focus was totally on spirit.
Yeah.
Help me heal my mind. Deeply, that was my focus, to the point of saying, please take it all and take me where I need to go in my mind. And that took me to the yoga center. That took me out of my world career. I mean, within a very short amount of time, I was guided to leave my work, leave my job, because I had a prayer to heal my mind. And I was guided to go into spiritual community. So I had the spaciousness to focus on my mind. That is where the healing happened. And it did not happen in the magic, but there were times plenty, and I still do. I use plenty of things, because sometimes the mind stuff, as you said, gets so big. It blossoms into this big turd cloud that you can't get out of until you just say, oh, okay, I'm going to let go of this and I'm just going to do this other thing, that somebody might call magic. I'm going to take aspirin today, or I'm going to use whatever.
Fancy cream on my face.
Fancy cream, whatever. We're not talking about the body as if you should be denying it or doing anything in a particular way. What we're really doing is saying the focus on the body as your primary point of interest and focus and attention is going to continue to lead to suffering. And if you can turn your attention to the spirit first and ask the spirit to show you how the body should be used optimally, then things can change right now.
Just right now. Where I'm at.
Right, exactly.
With what I believe and
what would
think.
be helpful? An aspirin, great.
Yeah.
What would be helpful? Go for a run. What
and
would
it'll
be helpful?
So
Take
light.
a nap. Totally.
When you can just give it over like that, like, oh, I can take an aspirin.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Like, I'm getting chills just thinking of that realization. Like, oh, I don't have to be so, tight.
Yeah. Well, and again, often we show up to our path through sickness and suffering. A lot of people get the wake up because they're on their deathbed, or they found out they've got cancer, or they've had an accident and they can't walk, or, they've lost a child or whatever. It's like usually it's inspired, the wake up, not because it needs to be dramatic, but it's often dramatic because we haven't been listening for so long that something in our mind wants to get our attention. And so, it's often that we're looking for answers that seem to be related to the body, to answer the sickness that we feel in our mind that seems to be sickness in the body. Oh, my knees hurt, my shoulders, my tension in my back. That's an inner state of mind issue. It's actually not a body issue. So when we focus on the light of truth, the healing can happen because we lighten up. The spaciousness comes in. We're not so tense. We're not so hard on ourselves. And hallelujah.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Feels like a good one to end on.
Yeah.
Yeah. The result should be a lightness. So whatever gets you lightness, real lightness, not like I'm gonna smoke
and
I'm gonna smoke some weed and feel light, not like that, like a real expansive that's what you want with all of it. And you can tune yourself and hone yourself to really be able to feel that. You just have to really practice it. Ask questions, receive guidance. Ask questions, receive guidance.
And tap in. Like right now, the lightness is here, so present. It feels so good. It's so here now. And so listening to a talk like this where people are inviting that into awareness and delivering the channel of grace. We aren't the grace, but we're available to it. And it's here right now. And so in your oneness, in your beyond the body, it's available to drink it in. The manna is present. The grace is here. Hallelujah.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Lots of love.
Lots of love.